Hello and welcome to the channel. Please don't forget at some point to click the like button and share this video if you think it'd be interesting to other people, and why not think about subscribing and hang around till the end, because there's going to be some information that might be of interest to other depressives like myself, or people who suspect they might be depressives. In this video, we're going to talk about what depression is. Not the textbook definition, you can look that up online. What I'm thinking of are some of the traits that contribute to being a depressive. And while some people who aren't depressives may well have these traits, we are talking to an excessive degree. So let's start. The first one is depressives, some at least, tend to be overly empathetic. You will end up helping people, whether doing physical labour or whether it's helping those people with emotional issues. And you will do that even though, because you feel their pain, even though you may not feel up to it yourself. And what happens is you give of yourself, and that brings your emotional reserves down. You're literally depressing yourself. What makes it worse is if the people you help don't at some future time help you in return, because then you are literally giving of yourself and lowering your emotional reserves and not getting any input, no emotional input back. When I say emotional input, I'm talking about they won't come and help you feel good. They don't help you raise your emotional level. They take but don't give, or give very little back. And this becomes something really hard. It makes you frustrated if you're in that situation, and frustration is another trait of being a depressive. The next one is, I've noticed that a lot of depressives are perfectionists. In my case, I like to write. I've got lots of ideas up here, but they're all scrambled. And when I can get a block together that fit together, the words that are in my head don't come out through my fingers when I'm either typing or writing. Even when I'm using a dictaphone, the words don't come out like they are up here. And when you're a perfectionist and what you try to achieve does not match the perfect image in your head. And by perfect, I'm not talking about it's going to be perfect. I'm talking about it's perfect, a perfect image, the perfect image of what you had in your head. So what the image in your head doesn't have to be perfect, but what you produce has to be a perfect reproduction. Otherwise, it doesn't work for you. And again, that leads to frustration. It can be very frustrating when you have an image of something, and what you achieve never matches it. Associated with that, I've noticed something that I call cosmic angst. It's when you see an image of what the world could be or your life could be, and you see the world as it really is, and you see the huge gulf between the two. It doesn't have to be a perfect world, just something better. And when reality is always so much so divorced from what that vision is, you see the gulf between, and you get frustrated at the fact that you can't even manage this tiny little improvement because something is stopping it. It doesn't necessarily have to be an external force, it could be something within you. But a lot of the time, it's the system that we live in. So you might think that you deserve, if you're lucky to be working, you deserve a promotion because you are particularly good at the job. You have been praised. But you see other people who have not been praised as much, who do not do as good a job as you do, pass you over. Again, that leads to frustration. The last thing, 'cause I want to try and leave this fairly short, is something that some people might not agree with, but I think a lot of depression is grief. It's not necessarily grief of losing a loved one or anything like that, although that can be an external shock that causes a depressive episode. But if you are permanently depressed, like me, you cannot achieve happiness for more than very short bursts. I think grief is a really big part of that. And what I mean by grief is you are grieving the loss of the person you could have been. You see the person, you see your life. Again, it's going back to the cosmic angst thing. You see what your life could have been like. You see what your life is like. And you are grieving. If you have a memory, which thankfully I don't, if you have a memory of being happy before the depression hit you, then you're grieving for the person you could have been if the depression hadn't hit. You grieve for the life that you grieve because the life you have has been damaged. You can't see a way forward either. You've lost a life and you cannot achieve what you want because of internal or external impacts on your mental reserves, your emotional reserves. So there's a lot of, as I said, a lot of frustration. There's a lot of grief. There's a lot of perfectionism. But it's not a perfectionism because you want things to be perfect. The world will never be perfect, but you can have a vision of a better world or a better life. The problem is that what you have in your head of that slightly better life or slightly better society or whatever is never as perfect an image. You can never make that image, no matter how small that image is, of a better whatever. No matter what you do, you can never achieve even that small amount of betterness. And again, it all comes down to you get frustrated. I will say one other thing. People think that if you are depressed and you're a long-term depressive, that you are weak-minded. You're not. A lot of the people that I have talked to, other depressives, are actually the strongest minded people, the strongest willed people. And in the case of some of the depressive men that I've met and spoken to, it's because they have tried to be strong for their family. So I always bring things back to me because I know me best, so I can discuss discuss what I'm talking about through the lens of my experience. For me, I had to be strong for my family. When my grandma had her stroke, she was hospitalised, and the first weekend we thought she was going to die. Mum, it was her mum, it was my maternal grandmother. My mum was totally wrecked, as you would imagine. My dad was very fond of my grandma, and he felt for mum. So together, they were still kind of weak together. My brother, my genetic sibling, who is older than me, 5.5 years older than me, he totally went off the rails. So I was there, I was trying to prepare my family for the possibility that grandma might die. So I was being strong. Yes, I wanted grandma to live. She is by far the most important person in my family. Still is, even though she's gone. And this was back in 1988. She used to treat me as an individual, not as my brother's younger brother. And so I was breaking up inside. But for everybody else, I was trying to be strong. I was trying to get them to understand that we have to prepare ourselves in case she dies. Of course, my brother went off the rails, as I said, and I was trying to be strong. At the time, I was living with my grandma, so I went back to my grandma's flat. Everybody else went off to their home. I took the phone off the hook and I burst into tears, and I couldn't stop crying for half an hour because I didn't want my fear, my grief, my sadness, I didn't want it to be affecting Mum, Dad, or my brother. And I became so used to doing that, to hiding my own personal feelings, that eventually I broke. There came a point where too many things were happening and it just snapped because I was trying to be too strong. There's the whole thing that if a tree is strong, it will fall over in a wind, but if it bends, it may not fall right over. It will just go back. So it's a case of I couldn't bend. Emotionally, I couldn't bend. Now, whether this is because I was following a gender stereotype. Man has to be stoic, resolute. That became a problem. And when you break, you don't break along one fault line, you shatter. And so it's much harder to put those bits back together again. And then you start to grieve for the person you were before you fell to pieces. You're not being weak-minded. It's you have been strong for so long that something has to give. And that is something I've noticed in some, not all, but in some of the men that I've met who have been depressives. Women, in some ways, have an easier time of it because women, the gender stereotype is women can talk about their feelings, and quite often do. Men don't. So a lot of the men, or at least 50% of the men that I've talked to, reached a point where they had been so strong for other people because they are overly empathetic that they have whittled down their resistance to negative shocks. And then they break. And that could be a short-term depression. So you have a depressive period and you may never have another one. Or you could become someone who has a permanent depression. And unfortunately, I'm one of those people. It may be that there's some biochemical aspect that triggered it off in the first place. But I do believe that it's my perfectionism, my grief at losing the person that I could have been, and all the other stuff, being strong for other people, helping other people, and not getting the reserves within me replenished. There's not enough people doing that to counteract the amount of energy I'm giving out. And that's what a lot of depressives have in common. Anyway, I'll leave it there. If I think of anything else, it will come in another video. But I hope this has been of interest or some kind of affirming experience if you are a depressive and you see yourself in some of the things I've been discussing. Don't forget to like the video if you did enjoy it. Don't forget to share it if you know someone who you think might benefit from this. And if you want to see more videos, don't forget to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when the next video is being dropped. I talk about lots of different subjects, so one thing you could do is look at the playlists that I've created, and if you want the ones about depression, then Depression Q&A and the Depression Diaries are the ones you would find most useful. And I hope to see you again soon.